This episode is sponsored by Repos Production. Hello and welcome to episode 60 of the Board Game Geek podcast, where we geek out about board games, the mechanisms behind them, and the people who create them. I'm your host, Candace Harris, and I am so pumped to be here today with one of my absolute favorite board game bloggers, Dan Thoreau from Space-Biff. How's it going today, Dan?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me, Candace. This is exciting.
Yeah. I had such a great time actually meeting you in person. Like, I've been following your content for so long, and I think almost everybody I know who plays games is like, you are their favorite reviewer, like written reviewer. Wow. You just crush it, and you cover such a wide variety of games, and it's really special what you're doing and very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you. Yeah, one of my favorite gaming memories is getting to meet you and a handful of other people last year or the year before. I'm still thinking of last year. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because we're 2025 now.
Yeah, now we're 2020. It's so hard to put myself in that frame of mind. But yeah, the 2023 SD HistCon was just so lovely. And you went back. I didn't make it this year, this last year.
We missed you.
Yeah, my 10-year-old, that like the day before I was supposed to fly out, she came into my room and was like, "Will you please stay home?" And I was like, "Well, that's it."
Yep. Family first.
So I hope to go next year.
Cool. Likewise, like, I hope we see each other. And yeah, it was really fun because we also, like, it was on that last day, got to play Arcs, the pre-production copy of Arcs. That was super awesome. What's new on your end? Otherwise, like, content-wise, life-wise?
I don't know so much about content, but my life is just gearing up for the year. You know, my family. I have 2 daughters. I do have my wife, and we decided to have a weekly family get together where we would talk about our week and have like a little family lesson. We're trying to provide some structure for our girls in the absence of, organized religion or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so we've had 2 of them so far, and they have been really fun. So that's kind of the main thing on my mind is trying to instantiate a family tradition, which is hard.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, just recently, my partner Matt and I decided to, like, because we realized, like, we both work remotely, but we're always like busy on different schedules. So we have instantiated coffee talk, which so in the morning we carve out some time, have coffee together and chit chat.
That's great. Yeah.
And hopefully I'll get them to play some games too.
It's so necessary when we are remote workers, I think, to make sure that we have a home and not just a workplace.
Yeah. Totally. Well, today, because you're on this show with me for our 60th episode, I feel like this is like the best topic for you and I to discuss, or anyone to discuss with you in particular. But today, we're going to discuss board and card games that hit different. You know, some games like that we find really special, a little quirky and weird, either from a thematic perspective or the mechanisms, just games that sort of fall out of the mainstream.
I'm so excited to talk about this because one of my main delights in writing about board games is just trying to introduce people to games they wouldn't have found otherwise. So it's kind of funny when a publisher will reach out and be like, do you want to review the new Ticket to Ride? And I'm like, Ticket to Ride doesn't need me, you know?
Yeah. I love that you, and I have discovered so many games through your blogs and so many other people who are reading your reviews. So I love that. And I like to do that too. Like, I like to try to spotlight games that people maybe have not heard about. And because I love that. Like, I love discovering new games and everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we get into our discussion about games that hit different, I'd love to hear what you've been playing lately, Dan. So let's jump into fresh plays.
So probably my freshest play, because I played it this morning, is I have been playing the 7th Citadel.
Okay, sorry. I just like I almost started that like 2 weeks ago, and
Really?
I set it up, but then I had to like tear it down. But anyway, go ahead, tell me.
So this is a game by, I don't know how to say his name, Ludovic Rowdy, I think. And it's just such a good name for a game designer, right? Like Ludovic.
Yeah. Oh,
that is incredible. I wish I had the name Ludovic. But so the 7th Citadel is sort of a spiritual sequel to the 7th Continent. So it is a campaign, like map building and hand management game, where it's in a weird high fantasy medievalish setting, and you have escaped a citadel that was a prison in which you were a slave gardener for these magical hedge wizard people. And some sort of cataclysm has broken the citadel, and now you're using it as your base of operations, and you are exploring kind of this post-apocalyptic medieval high fantasy landscape. And it's a fascinating game. I never played the 7th Continent.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, and so I had no idea what to expect. I knew people had kind of gushed over it when it was out, and now I'm playing it and I can see why. It just has such a weird and unique approach to how to do a campaign game.
That's so cool. So are you playing it solo?
I am playing it solo.
Okay.
I considered doing it multiplayer with like my daughter, but then I was like, I don't know what this is, and I wasn't sure if it would be too mature or complicated. So I was like, the way it's set up is you go through threats, I guess. I don't know if that's what they're called, but like each one is its own campaign, and you basically start the game over. And so I was like, I'll do one threat on my own, and if it seems like something she would like, then I'll do one with her.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, this is one that I am really excited to start playing. I think I'm trying to remember. I ordered some card sleeves for the main deck that you're going to be kind of shuffling a lot, and yeah, I like almost dug into it, but I don't even remember what like sidetracked me. But I cannot wait to get it to the table.
I was a little intimidated by it. Like that almost made me put it away. I don't like reading rule books very much. I know that's weird. I'm the only one. And so reading the rule book just gave me no sense of how it would play. So, but no, it was very intuitive once I got it going. So
very cool. Okay, cool. That's the 7th Citadel. And the other thing I was going to mention is I'm pretty sure like I saw a Dice Tower review, and I think Tom Vassell played it with one or two of his daughters. I don't know how their ages, compare to your daughters.
Yeah, I don't know, because he has he has children of every age, right?
Yeah.
Like 1 through 30 or something.
Probably.
Yeah. So Candace, what's your freshest play?
Okay, I'm going to save my freshest play for the second game.
Okay, cool.
This is a slightly fresh play, and it is an older game called The Lost Expedition. This is a game by Per Sylvester, came out in 2017 from Osprey Games. Plays 1 to 5 players, but I've actually only played it solo. You could either play head-to-head, like with 2 players, 1v1, or you can play with teams, or you can play co-op. From what I've heard, all of the modes work great, but I kind of only played solo with sometimes some cooperation from Matt chiming in as I'm like playing this like jungle survival game. So this is a card game where you're going to be leading a team of 3 explorers on the road to El Dorado, and you're basically trying to advance on these expedition cards so that you can find the lost city of Z. And this game, like, first of all, the cards are so, like, they're big. They're big, chunky cards. They have, like, really vibrant colored art that's kind of comic-y, cartoon style, but, like, more serious toned. You know, it's not, like, silly.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so you lay out these 9 expedition cards that, you know, and you put your little meeple to track your progress on the on your expeditions. And then you have this huge stack of adventure cards, which represent different encounters you're going to go through. And the game is split into like a morning phase and a night phase. Whether it's morning or evening, the first thing you do is you're going to put out a path of 6 cards. And when you play solo, the way it works, if it's morning, first you're going to draw 2 random ones from the top of the deck, and each card has a sequence number. So during morning, everything has to be arranged in sequence. So you'll put them in sequence. Then you're going to play 2 cards from your hand and put them in sequence. And then 1 more from the top of the deck and 1 more from your hand. And these cards, then you're going to have to like progress and resolve these cards from left to right. And let me tell you, like, most of these things are rough.
Yeah.
Like, they're like venomous snakes and leeches, but they're also like cool people you can encounter, like different tribes. And like, you know, oh, you cross a drawbridge or rope bridge or something like that. But the puzzle of figuring out which cards, you know, working with your hand of 6 cards to figure out how you want to play them in relation to the cards that are coming randomly from the top of the deck is really, really challenging. Not from a rules perspective, but just from a strategy kind of like puzzle perspective, because to win the game, you need to have at least one of your 3 explorers alive and reach the lost city of Z. And if your explorers all die, well, guess what, Dan? Game over.
Which is so weird to me. I almost feel like that should be the win condition. Because in a way, isn't this based on, like, I don't know if Per was doing this deliberately. It's hard for me to imagine he wasn't. Like, isn't this based a little bit on Percy Fawcett's expedition?
Yes.
And so, like, that was lost. And that's, like, the only reason we'd even think about it. Like, if he had actually found anything and come back, like, we'd just be like, oh, whatever.
Yeah. Totally. But in the game, like, you have 3 resources: food, ammo, and health. The iconography is just like fantastic because, like, when you gain a resource, the icon's in black. When you're spending it or losing it, it's in white. So it's like super clear. The cards have, besides like the name of whatever the encounter is and the art, they have like some combination of events, choices, and options. And events are mandatory. So events are in a yellow box at the top of the card. Red options are choices. Like if there are multiple reds, you have to choose one, but you have a choice. And then there are blue options, which you could trigger or ignore. And beyond that, your cards will have, or I guess within those different choices, a lot of what you're doing or deciding is like spending the resources. Or sometimes gaining the resources. And one of your resources is called expertise. So remember, each of your explorers had a different expertise: navigation, camping, and jungle. So sometimes you need to spend expertise, in which case you're going to lose a heart or a health off of one of the explorer that matches that specialization. But as you play the game, you might gain cards that give you expertise, so you don't have to reduce your explorer's health, which is cool. But you can potentially skip cards, swap cards. You might be adding cards to your path, removing them. So kind of puzzling the order for these cards it's really cool. It's a nice little challenge, and it's a very thematic game. And even though it's kind of, you know, you feel the survival, we have leeches and then a jaguar, you know, to deal with. Like you feel that theme. in this game. And the other thing is, like, in the evening phase, the cards are going to stay in the order that they're played, but you have flexibility with how, you're going to put 3 cards out, the deck is going to put 3 cards out, but you get to decide, you could play first or you could draw one from the deck first, either way. And in the evening, you can play cards at the start of the row or the end of the path. And then I also mentioned at the end of each phase, you have to eat. So you have to eat one food. So you're just kind of like managing these resources, trying to order these path cards so that, you stay alive and you're being as efficient as possible and hopefully advancing down the expedition track.
Have you won? Have you made it to the Lost City?
So yes, but asterisk, I played the easy mode, the easy solo mode. And so you use less expedition cards and you start with more health on on the explorers. So I won that game, but otherwise it's challenging.
I remember it being really, really hard.
Yes. But it's also it is really, really hard. But again, when you see the art and these different encounters that are there and you start making up these stories like you're really traveling through a jungle, it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, and it's more about that story, I always felt like.
Yes. I'm a big fan of I pretty much everything I've ever played from Per Sylvester. And so this is one that I've had for years, I think. And the main reason, what got me to bust it out on the table, I was going camping with friends for New Year's. And I was like, what can I bring that I can play solo in case people aren't in the mood for games? Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is great. So I finally played it. I really dig it. I already am trying to track down the expansion for it as well. But that is The Lost Expedition.
Did it make you at all more nervous to be camping? You're like, what if there's a bobcat out there?
We were camping in Malibu, not too far from the beach, so it wasn't all that remote.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, we'll be okay. We'll be okay.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Because I live up here in the mountains where, every year somebody goes missing, and I've spent years on the search and rescue team where we go out and look in brush and.
Oh my god!
So I didn't know if it was that kind of camping.
No. It's car camping.
That's cool.
Flushable toilets available.
Yeah, still camping. It still counts. It's great.
Yeah. And with I didn't end up playing it on the camping trip. I played it before, but during the camping trip, that escalated quickly, which is a game I mentioned on episode 59, party game. That was a big hit with everybody, and they all, because I had a lot of friends that are casual gamers. I'll say casual gamers, but yeah, they loved that one. And I also bought Trek 12. Have you ever played that one?
No, I haven't.
The only reason I know about this one is because Antoine Bauza loves roll and write games, and that was one of his favorites that he told me about. And it's kind of you're climbing a mountain, but it's it can be played as a campaign, where there are envelopes in there that you unlock. Mm-hmm. But the main thing is, when you roll the dice, you choose whether you want to take the higher die value, take the lower die value, add them together, or multiply them. Okay. And you can only make each of those choices 4 times. So, and
that's scary.
You're trying to connect certain numbers in a way. But anyway, so I thought that one was a good camping thematic one too.
Cool.
Yeah, and it turns out my friend Alyssa loved it, so I gave it to her because I was like, I have plenty of games, and it was funny when I gave it to her because it was her birthday. She was just like, "Oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this game so much," and she was gonna look into buying it. So I was like, "That's cool." That when friends who are very light casual gamers get excited by something like that. Anyway, that's my camping game roundup. What else have you been playing lately, Dan?
Well, so last night I played with my 10-year-old. We've been playing through the campaign, Kinfire Chronicles Night's End.
Okay.
Which is, it's a really big, very beautifully produced game by Kevin Wilson through his new studio, Incredible Dream. And it is also set in kind of a fantasy thing, also kind of post-apocalyptic. It's almost like there's like a feeling in our culture.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what that's about. And in that, like, so these starless nights have descended over the land, and so the only place that has not been consumed by the madness of these starless nights is a city that is protected by this magical lighthouse. And you play as heroes from this lighthouse who go out and protect like settlements and build lighthouses for them, and are trying to investigate why the starless nights are happening and what's going on with all of this stuff. And it's an interesting game because it's kind of a boss battler. So you make heroes. It's a little bit deck buildy where you set up your deck in advance with cool moves and abilities. And then you read through kind of a choose your own adventure setup. And then depending on how that went, it might add like fatigue cards to your deck, or it might give you an advantage, like change the battle setup. And then you go into a battle, and it's a little tactical battle using this deck of cards you've made. And it's an interesting, like the art direction is super good in it. It's really creepy. Like you'll fight like, oh, we're fighting like a scary deer, or because it was mutated in the Starless Nights, or we're fighting bandits who have been hiding out here. And every battle feels really crunchy and dangerous. My 10-year-old loves it, which is maybe informing my perspective a little, because she's at the age where she like makes little books.
Oh,
and
cool.
She's really into illustration. So she made her own little choose your own adventure book because she liked this game so much.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so we've been enjoying that a lot. I'm still trying to decide how I like it not in isolation of my 10-year-old.
Gotcha.
Because I usually get kind of bored of campaign games before too long, but she keeps being like, Daddy, I need to see what happens next.
And I love that.
Yeah, she's so fresh and excited. And I'm just old and jaded where I'm like, we'll figure it out. We'll save the lighthouse. We'll save the day. And she's like, but will we? And
I love it.
And so it's been a lot of fun playing that with her.
That's cool.
Kinfire Chronicles Night's End, I think.
Because there are other Kinfire games, right?
There are. So I don't think so. There are Kinfire games. There's 3 Kinfire Delve, which are sort of like their own kind of hand management games.
Gotcha.
And they're in the same world. You actually play as the same heroes that you can play in Kinfire Chronicles, but they're kind of like each one revolves around like one quest.
Gotcha.
And those, I reviewed all 3 of those last year, and I really liked those. Like really interesting hand management. I actually kind of liked them better than Kinfire Chronicles, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Maybe because they weren't campaigns.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, just one-shot scenario. Yeah. I saw it last year, or probably in the past year and a half, at different conventions, and I always thought the art was like really, really gorgeous. And I'm intrigued by it. So I think it's just one I need to pick up and try, at least the Delve ones.
Yeah, and I really like what it does with, so instead of miniatures, it uses standees, which really lets the art pop, because instead of seeing this gray standee for everything, like the characters are really colorful and vibrant, and the monsters are like, it is not a gray palette or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I really like how it looks.
Awesome. Well, I guess since you're mentioning these kind of like adventure games, my next fresh play is another older game. This is a game I was ridiculously excited about. Basically when I discovered I liked playing games solo, and I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. And the year it came out, I believe, is 2018, Mage Knight Ultimate Edition.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the original Mage Knight board game was from 2011, but I got into it when the Ultimate Edition came out, and I received it as a Christmas gift, and I remember that Christmas because I set it up, and even before then, I was watching Ricky Royale's Box of Delights videos, and just because I think at that point, Ricky's videos were still like kind of like the only ones that really like walked through, or it was rare. But now Colin from One Stop Co-op Shop has like great videos. Like there are lots more videos. There are how to play videos for Mage Knight. So, when I initially got it, I set it up and I was like playing it. I had done a lot of research, took me a while, and then it kind of just went in storage for a while because it's just, not an easy one to get to the table. And I don't even remember why recently I was like, I want to bust this sucker back out.
Yeah.
And I set it up. I have it back here on my little solo table. And I played almost a full game to like reacquaint myself with the rules and everything, because it is a challenging game to learn for sure.
Yes.
But once you're refreshed, it's not that bad, right?
No, it isn't. And can you so I learned it when it first came out, and oh my goodness, Candace, it was like the Dark Ages. Because so I remember sitting at a table and we could not figure out like how armor worked.
Oh.
And I was kind of newer to the hobby then, but we were just like, what is this
the
game?
combat is, But this is like, so for people who aren't familiar with Mage Knight, it is a game, kind of like an RPG style game, but like a little less on the story side, at least. Like there's no like narrative in there, but like the narrative just comes from playing it. And I'm pretty sure it's most often played solo.
Probably.
But you can play it cooperatively or competitively. Have you played it any other way?
Yes, and actually I wouldn't recommend it. I've played it like with 4 players, and it was miserable.
Oh,
because the turns are so in depth, right? Like you have to chart out like there's no such thing as planning in advance. And you have to like chart out like, okay, now I'm going to trudge through the desert, but it's daytime, so it's going to be so hot and it'll take like 5 movement points. Now I have to go through this forest, and there's like a spider, and his zone of control won't let me go past. And it's so hard. And you do that with 4 players, and it takes like 5 hours.
I can't even imagine that. Were you doing it co-op with 4 players?
I've done both.
I guess it doesn't even matter.
I've done both co-op and competitive. With 2, it's really fun. Have you done it only solo, or have you been doing it?
Only solo, but part of my refreshing is one of my good friends that I play with regularly, my friend Steven, also likes it, hasn't played it in a while, so we are going to play co-op together at some point in the near future. But I was like, let me get back so I can like have the rules down in case he has questions. But not yet.
And you're on the right track. Like with 2, it's pretty cool, especially co-op. Like, but with 3 or 4, oh my gosh, it's such a bear.
Avoid it at all costs. Got it. But so what I love about Mage Knight, besides the exploration, like it's just so like puzzly, and the deck building is really cool. And like each turn, like Dan was saying, it's like it's either a day phase or a night round. Sorry, day round or a night round. And during the day, moving through the desert is harder. But at night, it's easier. So it's less movement points. And same with the forest. The forest is like during the day, go ahead, you can move on through. But at night, it's a little hard to go through there because, you don't know what you're going to find. And you're kind of like moving across this map, and you're playing a scenario. So there are like lots of different scenarios, but the solo conquest, you're exploring the map by putting these tiles out. What are these? What is that shape called? Those tiles that have multi-hex spaces.
I don't know.
Yeah, Mage Knight location tiles. You're gradually exploring and building the map for each game, and you're trying to find these 2 cities. But the other really cool thing about Mage Knight is you're going to be leveling up your Mage Knight as you play. And there are, I think, like 7 different Mage Knights you can play as. And they're slightly asymmetric. But you have a starting deck of cards that has, and the cards are multi-use also. So like you can rotate a card to play it as a 1 move, a 1 attack, a 1 block, or a 1 influence maybe. I think you could do all the basic actions by playing a card rotated.
No, yeah, that's right.
You also have mana that you have, like, that you can use. Right. And so you're trying to balance using the mana to like power up certain cards. You're trying to recruit armies. So you're finding different locations and trying to recruit armies so you can kind of leverage them as well. You're getting spells for your deck. As you level up, you get to get a skill and an advanced action card. So your deck is building up, and the skills are really cool. You get to draw 2, choose 1, and then what else is
you can
there?
Be evil.
You can be evil.
That's one of my favorite things about the game. As I'm such a softie that I always play as a good guy in RPGs, but I love that you can just go to a monk's monastery and be like, I'm going to burn it down.
Burn it down. You can. I mean, you're going to lose some reputation. So there's like a fame and reputation track that you're kind of like managing too. And then the other thing that happens as you level up, so there's this track. It's how you level up. It's a kind of a point track.
Yeah.
And when you get to certain tiers, again, you can get like one of the tiers will let you get a skill and an advanced action for your deck. But then the other one lets you unlock another slot where you can build out your army more. And it's also at the same time strengthening your armor and or giving you a bigger hand size, which is really cool. So you're like trying to level up. You're trying to, and leveling up usually means you have to clap some enemies. Like you have to go to places where enemies are, fight them, defeat them, and then you get a certain amount of fame. That's fame. Yeah, that's fame. Yeah, that's the fame track. Duh.
Right.
I don't know why I was thinking like the reputation track, since it goes from like it has a negative side and a positive side. But yes, that's reputation. Fame is what you're gathering to level up your Mage Knight. And it's super cool. And the combat can be tricky because these like enemies that you're encountering have different stats. Like some of them are like resistant to fire attacks, and some of them will ice attack you or swift. You know, it's not a simple game by any means, but it is very fun to like. I'm trying to keep it in rotation on a little side table so I could just like play a couple turns, take my time. Yeah. And my friend Steven 3D printed me these tile holders so that the board doesn't like, it's not all like fiddly.
Oh, nice.
And he was like, I was like, did you print them for yourself? And he's like, no, I don't see why I would need them. And I'm like, this is one of those things you don't know you need till you have it. Because I'm like, I can shift my whole map around. Like if I want to move it closer easily, everything stays locked in. Yeah. So if you have 3D printers or they're, people on Etsy make them.
I wish I had that for the 7th Citadel. Because that's a game where you're like shifting the map, but it's like 30 cards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I need to get me let's see, who do I know with a 3D printer that I can mooch off of?
Exactly.
That's my goal.
That's what you got to find. Got to find your 3D print person. But yeah, so Mage and I just kind of like came back into my headspace, and I just like, I love it. I love like, even if I don't have a day where I can play, I love walking by and seeing it there. And I'm so excited to kind of play it more and hopefully get better.
Yeah,
get better at it and like internalize some of those like quirky rules. Also, because there's an expansion coming out, I think this year.
What?
For it. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm excited about it, but I'm like, I haven't played enough of the the base game or the current expansion.
Well, 7 heroes is so much. The original game came with, I think, just the 4.
4. Yeah.
That's so much stuff that you can already explore.
Yeah, I know. But hey, the fact that the expansion is coming made me excited to revisit it. But yeah, I want, that's kind of what I want to do. Like I want to play through with every mage and yeah.
That is super fun. I kind of want to play that again. I don't remember what it was called, but there was that Star Trek version of Mage Knight.
Oh yeah.
Where I really liked it.
Did you play that one?
Yeah, I liked it because again, I'm a softie and you could go and be diplomatic instead of fighting the monsters because you could be all like Picard and go and be like, I'm going to tell you about some philosophy. And then they'd be like, you're right. We shouldn't fight.
I love that. You know what? At some point, I'm going to have to get into Star Trek because I feel like I'm accumulating Star Trek games and I want to be more into the lore of knowing the different factions and characters and everything. Ugh, so many Star Trek games, but I'll get there. Anyway, that's Mage Knight Ultimate Edition. Awesome. I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's designed by Vlada Shavtil. And this Ultimate Edition had co-designers Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules and Phil Pettifer, who did some of the expansion design work. And it's from WizKids. So anyway,
cool.
Check it out if you're if you're a solo gamer or a 2-player co-op and you like heavy games, puzzly, exploration. Give it a whirl. It's pretty awesome. And it also just makes me think about Vlada as a designer. Like, holy cow. Like, Vlada made Codenames, Mage Knight, Dungeon Pets. Like,
it's like he just revolutionizes entire genres without even trying.
Yeah, through the ages. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What a punk.
And now a word from our sponsor. Welcome to the first one-deck building. Who will wear the crown? Coming from noble families, you're ready to do anything to accede to the throne, except that the competition between the pretenders is fierce. For a Crown is a game with original mechanics, combining bluffing, alliances, and opportunism. Players will be able to recruit new characters and put the purchase card in a sleeve of their own color. All cards, player cards, and common event cards are shuffled into a single deck, which is drawn card by card and resolved one by one by the relevant player. After 4 rounds, the player with the most rubies wins the game. For a Crown is enhanced by stunning artwork and components, making the game completely immersive. It's a game full of tension, dirty tricks, fallen hopes, and moving family influence. Its universe and constant interaction make it ideal for families and more experienced players alike. Let's get into our board and card games that hit different. So, Dan, I'm just curious, like, how hard was it for you to pick the 5 games you wanted to discuss?
It was really hard. So I kind of had to narrow it down because, like, I went down. I have a forever shelf that is
nice.
Just like, this is just stuff that I love and I'm going to keep forever.
Cool.
Even if I don't play it often, right? Like, I'm only going to pull this off my shelves every few years just to refresh and enjoy, like, soak in the experience. And so I went and I looked at my forever shelf and I was like, some of these are they maybe hit too different because they're just like super hard to get. So I wanted to be kind of fair and pick games that I feel like you could still probably access in some way.
Cool.
I normally don't worry too much about the commercial angle because I don't feel like that's a critic's job. But I was like, for this, I do want to kind of pick some titles that I feel like are relatively current, are things that if you're listening and you think this sounds super cool, that you could probably go out and experience this game for yourself. So
yeah,
I tried. Yeah, well, so I did my best.
I almost feel like this needs to be like an ongoing series, like once a year or twice a year we get on here, and just so I can hear more and more games like this, because I feel like you play a lot of these quirky games and you put a lot of them on my radar. But hopefully the games that I picked, some of them you haven't played.
I hope so. But even if I have, I'm super excited to hear because I just love talking about games, even, especially if they're weird games that struck you differently. Some of the fun of the hobby is even hearing like somebody talk about a game really well and the way that it maybe was different for them.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So I hope we have, I even hope we have a little overlap because that would be kind of funny.
Well, let's see. We'll start with you with the first game you want to mention.
Okay, so I started with a game that I reviewed very recently, and actually, this game was designed. I am led to understand by someone you know.
I know what this is.
So I'm picking this because it is just so weird and so recent. So this is Propaganda, designed last year. This was offered at the Indie Games Night Market for sale. It's Propaganda by Chris Lawrence. A self-published game. And should I describe it?
Yes, please. I actually have not played it. Like, I heard a little bit about it. But yes, Chris is a good friend, a local game friend. Like, we've play tested each other's games a bunch. Well,
That's super cool.
I have one game. He has multiple. Like, he is like a serial designer. And I'm so happy to see that his games are starting to get out there, because he has a lot of like really cool ideas and stuff that I've play tested over the years.
So I'd never heard of Chris, and now I'm really looking forward to anything he designs in the future, because this game put him on my radar.
Cool.
So what it is it's Propaganda, and you really need to play it with at least 3 players. You can go up higher, but the idea is that 2 players are fighting a war, and they need to be sequestered from the other player for a reason that will become obvious in a moment. And these 2 players play this little dice game where they're chucking dice into a box, and you have to rebound the dice, and you're throwing them at the same time. So often they like hit each other and go out of the box, and it's crazy. And your goal is to get your dice to land on certain circles inside the box, and those will score points. And at the same time, you're also trying to roll certain numbers because those will give you points. And those are points that are your strength in the war.
Cool.
And after every roll, so far it sounds pretty normal, right? But what you do is you take out your camera after every roll and you take a picture. And it has to be zoomed in, and you can only get 2 dice in each shot. So you are making evidence, like documenting the war.
Wow.
And the reason that's important is because once you're done with the war, you tally up your relative strength. So like if I'm playing against Candace, maybe you smoked me, right? Maybe you have 5 combat points to my 1, right? and a lot of it is just chance. So maybe you have 4 more points than me. But then what happens is the other player comes in, and this person is playing as the global superpower.
Okay.
And we both present our evidence and try to persuade the superpower to give us assistance, like troops, sanctions against the opponent, whatever it represents. So I'm like, okay, so Candace has 5 more combat points than me. So you need to give me 5 combat points. Or maybe you're like, no, Dan is a stinker. He's lying. He has 2 more combat points than me. And the superpower needs to assign one of us a number. And that's how much they're willing to help us. Now, our goal is to end up with a higher number, because whoever has the higher number wins that many points. So if like we end and you had 6 and I had 4, you would get 2 points. But the superpower, their goal is to keep us equal. And so they get 3 points if we are totally even. But every point that we are not even, they lose a point. So, So if it was like you had 6 and I had 4, they would only get 1 point, right? Because there's 2 points difference.
2 off. Yeah.
And you repeat this process with everyone kind of switching off who is fighting in the war and who's a superpower. And then you keep track of everyone's points. And it's just such an odd game. And it's trying to talk about like um, the global North trying to keep the global South constantly bickering, not paying it, not forming coalitions against them. It's asking questions about the nature of truth. For instance, in his frequently asked questions document on Board Game Geek, he mentions that you are free to like edit your photographs.
Sneaky.
Yeah. And so you can do stuff like that. And, so I won't say it's a perfect game. Like, I do wish that the war was a little more fleshed out. I think it could be expanded on a little bit. But as a concept, I think it's really exciting, and it gets everyone at the table thinking.
That's
and
awesome.
It's really mean, and it makes everyone angry, which I love.
Yes, emotions.
Yeah, emotions.
Cool. So that's propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda.
At PAX Unplugged, when that indie night market was happening, I showed up with some people around like a half an hour before it was supposed to start, and the line was crazy.
That's
like,
what I've heard.
I'm like, is there like a Radiohead concert we're in line for? Like, what is going on? But it was exciting. It was exciting because, like, Daniel Newman and everybody didn't know what to expect.
Right.
I think they were expecting it to be such a smaller thing, but it was one of those things at PAX Unplugged where whenever I talked to someone, they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be going to this thing tomorrow night." And I'm like, "You are too?" Like, so I just stood on the sidelines and watched because I was like, if I get in this line, I'm going to be so sad if I'm not able to buy any games. So I just watched, but I was really excited to see Chris in the lineup and Jonathan Cox from new name Getting Games, formerly John Gets Games, but he had a game there with a bunch of dice too, and yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah,
Glad you got to play it.
Yeah, I've played 4 of the games. It was really cool because Marceline Lyman, she did High Tide. She sent it to me a little bit in advance, and so a few designers ended up sending me their games in advance so I could kind of hype up the market. And
cool.
I don't know if that contributed in any way. I mean, I would doubt it, but I'm just so happy that it did so well because I think it shows that there is a thirst in our hobby for like, small, independent, kind of almost grassroots type designs. Like, give me something genuine created by a person.
Yes.
So I'm really excited by how well it's done.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too, like indie rock music,
Yeah.
like, going from like mainstream popular stuff. Like I went through so many different phases with the music that I've listened to throughout the years of my life, but I had a phase where I was like into a lot of like harder rock, like Tool and but then I had this like really deep phase where I was like into a lot of like indie rock, and I was into a lot of indie rock, and I love like just hearing that like lo-fi production.
Yeah.
There's like so much heart, and it's like it's a very similar thing with these indie games that are coming out. It's really exciting.
It is. I love that metaphor because like, so growing up, one of my favorite bands was the Mountain Goats, right? Where like his early albums, you could hear
I don't think I know.
Oh, okay. So the Mountain Goat. So it for a long time, it was just him creating things on his own. And he has produced just tons of, I don't even know how many.
I wrote it down. I'm gonna do that deep dive.
It's John Darnielle. And so when I was like coming out of high school, all of his albums, you could hear, he would record it on his boombox. And so you could hear like the clack of the cassette tape that was recording it.
That's awesome.
And he was very raw, and now he has a band and they tour more and they sound a lot more polished and professional, and they're still great. They do like at least one recording a year.
Okay.
But he's done like 20, 30 albums, something crazy like that. And some of them are just incredible. And yeah, just that very raw, emotional, like and some of his songs, like his design principle was, I'm going to write it and then record it that same day. And so some of them, apparently he doesn't even know how to perform anymore because he went from concept to recording within the span of 24 hours.
Yeah,
And that
that's
rawness,
cool.
I love to see some of that in tabletop, where there are a few designers, just a few who are, and more though, who are trying to get across, like, here's an encapsulation of something I was thinking or feeling,
Yeah.
instead of this very polished product. And I think it does communicate something very distinct. So I love that.
Totally. And it's like even like all the imperfections of it is like really cool. Because like personally, like when I started learning guitar and I started learning how to record on my own, I would record songs and usually it would be a verse and a chorus and then like just the chorus would keep
Yeah.
going. But I would record everything, like the drums, the guitar, the bass, vocals. And afterwards I was like, well, this is it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I should flesh this out into a full song. I don't know if I can perform it, but like because I don't know if I can ever recapture the emotion that I had when I made those songs originally. So I have quite a few of these like just random ideas that I'm like, well, like that I thought about at some point. I should like record this for real and like finish it or whatever. But then I'm like, nah, it's just kind of a special snapshot in time.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, that was Propaganda. Great pick. My first game, I don't know if you've played it. I know you do like trick-taking games. So this is a trick-taking game that I played this year for the first time called Witch's Shot Delivery Service. Have you heard of
No,
this?
I haven't played it. No.
Yes, I found one. It's called Witch's Shot Delivery Service. It's designed by Nico Yanagi. It came out in 2022, and the publisher is listed as Nico Yanagi Daikense. It plays with 3 or 4 players, and in this game, you are a courier and for a delivery company, and you're going to be trying to meet each day's quota of delivering packages, like boxes. And the challenge is your strength is limited and your lumbar vertebrae isn't made of steel or titanium. So you could hurt your back from repetitive
Oh my
strain
goodness.
as you're delivering these packages. And as a fun fact, because you're like, what's a witch's shot? A witch's shot is like a term used for a sudden sharp pain in your lower back that feels like you're being shot.
Oh.
And I guess it's also known in German as Hexenschuss, which is a term that like literally translates to shot by a witch.
Right.
So I was like, that's kind of wild. But in this game, you're playing a trick-taking game, but you're trying to avoid permanently injuring yourself. And so you have to pace yourself with the loads that you are carrying. It's a must-follow trick-taking game. So the main deck of cards you have these like 42 package cards, 4 suits, 10 ranks, like 1 through 10, and then you have 2 black special like 0 cards. And if you play with 3, you play 3 rounds. If you play with 4, you play 4 rounds. But the first thing that happens in a round is you're going to, or like when you're starting the game, you're going to put all these quota cards out. So there's a 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is like, these are your bids. Like this is how many packages do I think I'm going to deliver today? Because if I do, I get a cool bonus.
Yeah.
Then everybody gets cards dealt. And whichever cards are left over, you reveal one by one, because that is going to determine the priority, like the strength of the suits for the round. So like, if there are 3 red cards and that's the most, red is going to be the strongest. And there are like some tiebreakers, but there is a little priority card. So each 4 suits are ranked in terms of their strength in relation to each other. But then after you have your cards, players are going to draft one of those quota cards. So this is like a bid, for the current round. And after you get your bid, you're going to like flip that card over. And on the back of the cards, the quota cards, is like a spine. Like it's like a track that's like a spine. And so everybody's going to have their card there. And then you're going to like play a must follow trick taking game. So the way the tricks work is that whoever wins the trick is going to have to deliver all of the cards played to that trick.
Oh,
So
no.
so the different cards in the deck have a variety of number of boxes on them. So you're going to count up, like after you win that trick, Dan, you're going to count up all the boxes on all the cards played, and hopefully you are able, it's not it's not too heavy for your back.
Yeah.
And regardless, whenever you win, you're going to put 1 cube on your fatigue track. So, or on your spine track, it's a fatigue cube. So just winning a trick makes you start to, oh, my back is hurting, so in the future, you might like bust and break your back if you pick up too much.
Oh, no.
But then you're only going to keep your card. So out of the cards won, you're going to keep your card. And the amount of boxes on your card is what's going to count towards that quota that you're trying to fulfill. So, however, if the total packages that you win for that trick are greater than your current strength, you get injured. So you're going to have to take an oof token in addition to the fatigue cube. And the fatigue cube is just kind of like temporary for that round. Like they'll get cleared off. But these oof tokens are not. They're going to carry with you going forward. You have like a permanent injury. So you're going to always, in future rounds, start with less strength for these oof tokens. And if you get 3 oof tokens, you lose. You lose the game. So you have to kind of like watch what you're getting. The other thing is, after you get an oof token, on the future rounds, you can flip the oof token over to avoid winning a trick. So when you play a card into a trick, you could say, okay, I'm going to use my oof token, and so I cannot win this trick. And that kind of resets every day, every day. That's what the rounds are. And it's basically, they say when you flip over the oof token and do this, you say, I have a bad back today, so I'm not lifting anything.
So cool.
Whether or not you get injured, again, the winner of the trick is gonna take that card, the card they played into the trick, discard everything else, and you're gonna do this until you play all of the cards in your hand. And then at the end of the round, you get 1 point for each card you delivered. So just 1 point per trick won. However, the 1 through 3 ranked cards are worth 2 points. And then each player who hit their quota exactly then gets to get whatever the amount of bonus points is on that quota card.
Yeah.
And there's also like a paid vacation token, like which you could play with an optional rule where the person, I think, who's like last to draft a quota card gets a PTO token that they can like avoid one trick. There's also a cursed package optional rule, which the number 6 card of every suit is deceptively heavier than it looks, and it causes extra strain. And like basically, if you win a trick and a 6 is in there, in addition to taking a normal fatigue, you have to take a black fatigue, which kind of reduces your strength by 2.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it's just this really wild game because like as you're winning tricks and you're trying to hit your bid, but you're also like looking at the cards that are getting played into the trick and the amount of boxes and hoping not to get screwed and like break your back. And it's just like such a wacky theme, and like it just, I don't know, it's a strange game, but it's really, really cool.
So how did you play this game?
My friend had a copy, and now I have a copy. I forget how did I get? This might have been like a Tricky Imports.
Oh, okay.
This might have been like a Tricky Imports purchase.
Okay, I didn't know because sometimes there's also people who mule stuff back from like the Tokyo Game Market, and so I didn't know if that was the case here or something.
Not with this one. I suspect it was from Tricky Imports.
Cool.
I think so. But yeah, so it's a little harder to get, but it
looks cool. I'm looking at the image on Board Game Geek, and that spine tracker just kind of cracks me up.
Oh my gosh, the commentary around the table was hilarious as we played this game and we were making the sound of like, like, and doing like that kind of stuff. But yeah, lots of shenanigans, and again, I didn't mention it, but the person who has the most points at the end of the game wins. And if you get 3 oof tokens, you automatically lose. So, I mean, the game I think you finished till the end of the round.
Yeah.
Or something like that and then scored up. But yeah, that's Witch's Shot Delivery Service.
I love it. So my next pick is a little bit of an odd duck.
I love it.
But it is a game by our beloved Amabel Holland.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes from a little over a year ago. This is a game called Endurance.
I haven't played it. I haven't played it yet. But actually, before you get into this, I was just thinking, I was like, there are 2 designers / publishers that could have been this whole list.
Right.
and Amabel Holland and Holland Spiel is one of them.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I wanted to pick this because I wanted to pick something of hers that was kind of recent and also something that was a little bit meaningful to me. So Endurance is solitaire only. You play as Shackleton's ill-fated expedition to explore Antarctica. And so you are given control of the entire crew and you need to assign them to do various actions. But also the longer the game proceeds, the worse events get for you. Like your food might go bad or your cat might die. Just bad things will continue to happen. And there might be a mutiny against your leadership. Eventually, there's a really terrible phase in the process of play where you have to load everyone up on lifeboats and just survive the ocean for a bunch of rounds of dice play. And it's just totally possible that maybe one of your lifeboats of survivors disappears. And then you go into the next phase of the game where you're just surviving and some of your people go off to try to find help and you just need to weather until you are rescued. And it's a very difficult game. And it's notable for a couple of reasons. Probably the biggest one that people talk about a lot is the fact that there is no victory condition. So Amabel, in designing it, kind of took the historical stance that, and I love this stance because, as you probably know, I work as a historian, and we often assume that because something happened historically, that it's inevitable, that things couldn't have gone a different way. And Amabel's perspective on Shackleton is that that's the 1 in a million outcome, that everyone survives. And so playing this game, my best outcome is that I have made it through with only 3 of my crew dying. And I considered that a big win. But historically, Shackleton got everyone to survive, except for the animals, which are included characters in the game that can die. And but even Shackleton, throughout his life, kind of considered the whole thing a loss because his crew was not supposed to be imperiled like that. And so the game raises these really big questions about kind of the artificiality of victory conditions. Like, can you really place a victory condition like in a war game where you're like, well, I won, but also I lost millions of people.
Right.
Is that really a win? And it's a brutal game, but it's also a really optimistic game that just has a great warmth for the human experience and our capacity to endure bad things and life-breaking events. And so it's a game that I played and just I very much appreciate it. It's a game sometimes I think back on when I get a little bit discouraged because, if they can get out of being in winter for like 2-3 years, I don't remember exactly how long they were there, but I'm sure I can get over my, sore throat or whatever is dragging me down that day.
Right. Wow. I really want to play Endurance. That sounds like I know like one of my friends who also is into a lot of Holland Spiel games. He's played it And that sounds like just a really unique experience, like gaming experience.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up something by Amabel because she's been doing these very experiential, like, what can we make you, the player, feel, as opposed to like purity of rules or mechanisms or balance of points. So it is a weird game. Like, it does not try to like feel resource converty or any of the ways that most board games feel. But I would recommend it. Endurance, brutal but very beautiful game.
Awesome. I'm gonna definitely. Actually, you know what? My birthday is next month, and some people were asking what to get me. So,
well, how about this? I'll send it to you for your birthday because I have a copy, and honestly, I'm never going to play it again because I've played it like 5 times and I've seen what it has to offer. So why don't I send it to you for your birthday?
Oh my gosh! Thanks, Dan.
Because I think you would,
That's awesome.
As a solo gamer, I really do recommend this one.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, my next game on my list is another Hollenspiel game, but not designed by Amabel, designed by John Dubois. And it is Heading Forward, which is a 2022 release, another solo game. And this is a game where you take on the role of someone going through rehab after a brain injury. And this is like based on John's real recovery experience, which off the bat, like before you even start seeing how the game works, like that is just wild that, you know, and it's so cool that he made this game of like kind of going through what he went through when he was recovering from brain surgery. But basically to win the game, you have to like relearn and develop skills, and you'll have to achieve goals in different, these like 3 different areas in the time that you've been allotted by your insurance company.
Yeah.
And that's a little too, it's real, you know, it's real. And otherwise they're going to stop paying for your rehab sessions and you're going to lose the game. Mechanically, it's a hand management, resource management game where you're going to be trying to like level up these cards. If I recall, the cards are like double-sided, so like they'll flip at some point as you level them up into your hand.
And they're double carded, right? Because there's also every card is technically 2 cards with 2 sides.
Yes, yeah. So you're going to be trying to like develop these skills by like spending resources for time, and then you have care, which is like different hearts, and then you have spoons, which is a resource that you can kind of use every turn, and also money. And you're playing these cards strategically and trying to like manage your resources to level up in these different skills before the time tracker is a calendar, which is like everything about this game is very thematic. It's indie, it's like thought-provoking. There's a trigger card also in the deck.
Oh yeah, the trigger.
Which is like makes you remember your trauma, and it's like a setback. And so everything in this game is very realistic, like thematic, and it's like you kind of feel the struggle. Like I've never had to recover from brain surgery, but like I feel like because John created this game from his experience and just and from playing it, it's like really unique, puzzly, challenging, and it hits different, you know?
Yeah. I absolutely love that pick. So Heading Forward, I think, is one of the most impactful, like agitprop style games of the last few years, just in terms of the anger and frustration and despair it can generate in the player. And because of those, hopefully some empathy.
Right. So that is Heading Forward. What is the next game on your list, Dan?
Okay, so I'm going to try to be a little cheerier and than Endurance and Heading Forward.
Okay, cool.
So I wanted to pick a game by John Cloudus because you and I had talked about that you recently discovered the games of John Cloudus.
Yes.
I have been following his games for over a decade now. And so John designs through small box games, and he has been doing the indie thing forever. He designs tons of games, and they are all kind of in their own category. But this one, I didn't want to pick because I always talk about Omen: A Reign of War. That's kind of his biggest hit. I didn't want to pick that one. So this one is one of my favorites of his. It's called Bronze Age.
Oh.
And it's from just a couple of years ago. It's from 2022. And it is a civilization building card game where what you're trying to do is you are putting out like the buildings and the goods that are going to represent your civilization's growth. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to build like society cards or prosperity cards or exploration cards with my ships. And the more you pile together, the more points you're earning. And depending on your civilization, those will be worth more or fewer points for you. But halfway through the game, something really interesting happens. And it's because, so John himself, his education when he was in college was in history. And so many of his games are trying to evoke something, even if he really likes to lean into like, innovative mechanisms and all that. So halfway through the game of Bronze Age, the Bronze Age collapse happens, which is a historical event that happened in the 12th century BCE when, there's all these big civilizations and suddenly they just implode in the course of like a century. And the archaeological record just goes crazy because they were all interconnected and trading all throughout the Mediterranean and the Near East. And suddenly they don't anymore. And all these cities are burned and these empires fall. And what happened? And historians have debated it forever. Well, John doesn't take a strong stance on what happened. All that you know is that it does. So the deck as soon as the deck needs to be reshuffled, everyone goes through a fall where some portion of their little tableau is just wiped out.
Wow.
And now you are trying to piece back together before the game ends some sort of semblance of a card engine again, because it's you trying to recover from this collapse.
Wow.
And so the game covers like 400 years of history in a very abstract way, but I think it does end up saying something pretty cool about the sweep of history. And it feels really intriguing to build a card engine that then is just like ripped apart. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm going to put it back together again.
Wow.
And so super interesting game. I love the Bronze Age. Bronze Age.
So I haven't played Bronze Age, but like when I discovered John Cloudis's games, I definitely like went to Smallbox Games website and was like kind of going through all of them, but I only picked up a few to get started with. But that sounds super cool. And like tossing it back to SD HistCon again, this past SD HistCon, I saw people playing Pax Porfiriana, and it just reminded me, like, I want to revisit that game a lot. And Corey Graham was saying, and he's one of the designers of Vijayanagara, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. He was saying that Pax Porfiriana is his favorite game. And so I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, so I'm like, what other games do you like to play? And he starts telling me, he's like, I like a lot of like weird games. And actually, I'm trying to remember some of the other ones he told me, but he specifically mentioned a lot of the 2-player card games that John Cloudis designs. So then I picked up like the new version of Omen. I forget what the tagline is. I played it twice. I really liked it. Cause you're more of an Omen expert. I'm trying to even remember what I like so much about it. You're kind of like doing like a lane combat, a battler, but something I don't remember exactly. I don't remember exactly, but I liked it a lot. And it was like, It felt like, even though the theme was something that, we've seen before, like the way it felt, some of the mechanisms just felt like different.
Yeah.
So I ended up picking up like Omen Reign of War, like one of the like the Omega edition.
Right.
And then I got the Compass Archive series, like the North, the South, those games. And I was actually hoping to play at least one of those before our conversation, but I haven't had a chance. But I did get to play Pariahs, the new that's probably his newest game, I think, at the moment.
I think it's probably his newest like big game. He just sent me a box of 4 new games.
Awesome.
So, and one of them was Pariahs, so I know it's out, but I think the others are maybe newer, but I don't he does different editions of games. So don't treat what I'm saying as gospel there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I did get to play Pariahs recently, and it's really neat because even in the rule book, he says, like, hey, you know, I'm combining these mechanisms that you're familiar with, but in a different way. Like, they're multi-use cards. It's a worker placement game with cards, and you can use workers in different ways, and you're trying to, like, you have these different ways of getting votes. It was really cool. I want to play that more. So I'm definitely glad that like John Cloudis is on my radar, and I'll look for your blog write-ups on the 4 new ones whenever you get to play them.
Yeah, I wrote about Pariahs last year, in part because like his crowdfunding model is so refreshing. It's the way that, like, when people complain, they're like, Kickstarter isn't doing what it's supposed to do. John Cloudis is. Like, he takes something and delivers within like 2 months.
That's so cool.
And it's always some project that he couldn't afford to do on his own. And yeah, so I wrote about Pariahs last year, and I'm so happy that it's people are finally playing it. And a bunch of people have really been liking it, which is such a relief because, you know, John, his games have never really caught on. And there's some little inkling in me that's like, you're just nuts. You just like this guy. And no, it's just that he deserves more people they should play his games. It's just, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, even from my limited taste of his games, I agree. I think there's definitely something special, and I love when you play a game like Pariahs, where I've only played it once, and we literally like read the rules, set it up. But like after, I immediately wanted to like play it again.
Mm-hmm.
I love that there are like lots of like, and then there's deck building, but no discard pile. So like it's just kind of like a little different and cool. I want to play it more now that I've played it once and just like explore it more. I also the games in the North series, like I really want to try that too. I hear that's like really unique and another kind of like card system that like the more you play it, the more you like are like, ooh, I have these options, and that's cool. I'm very happy that you have a John Cloudis game on here, and one that I haven't played. You did it. Awesome. Well, the next game on my list is also a happier theme, and it's it's called Peacemakers: Horrors of War.
Oh, I love Peacemakers.
Oh, you played it?
Yeah.
You played this one? Okay. All right. This one I had a review copy because I actually did an interview with the designer, Sami Laakso. This one was co-designed with Ville Reinkainen. This is a re-implementation of a game called Dawn of Peacemakers from 2018, which I've never played, and it's published by Snowdale Design. This came out in 2024, and it's also worth noting that Sami does like a lot of the art for his games, and the art, like all of his games, like Dale of Merchants, they're all in this like similar setting, this similar vibe, and it's really cool. But Peacemakers: Horrors of War is a game where it's a cooperative game where we are adventurers and we are trying to prevent 2 animal armies from going to war. And if you look at this game, you'll be like, oh, it's something like Root or something, you know, because you have these really cool animal meeples and everything. But the fact that you're trying to like talk these different animal factions and try to break up the fight, like just thematically, I think that's so cool. And this game is a scenario-based game. So there's 6 scenarios. You can replay them, not a campaign. They all have different challenges, and you'll play with like different animal armies. I think there are like 5 or 6 different armies. And the other cool thing is the board is it's 2 wire-bound books that you put together to like make up the map that you're playing on. And each army has this motivation track. And what you need to do is to win is get both of them in this like green zone on their motivation track where they are both like equally more or less not motivated to go to war.
Yeah.
Because if one of the army's motivation drops all the way to the end, they just kind of like give up, and that's you lose the game, because that's not what we want, you know?
Yeah.
So like just like thematically, that is like really, really cool. And I think it's very like well executed as well. Each round of the game, so you have an adventure phase, and during that you're going to be playing resource cards. And there's no player order. So if you play with multiple people, it's just like we talk and we do stuff, and you know, you're trying to play these cards to manipulate the different armies on the board. So hopefully that you lower their motivation to fight each other. And each resource card that you play has different icons that tell you which actions you can perform. You can travel around the board and move to different units and other adventures. So because a lot of effects, you want to be like nearby other units to be able to do something else. You can survey armies. And so each army that's in the scenario you're playing has 2 order cards. They have these order decks. Not 2. They have 2 decks of cards. And when it's their turn to act, you're going to reveal both cards, and that's going to kind of dictate what they're going to do that round. So by surveying, when it's the adventure phase, we can kind of reveal these cards and maybe help prevent some damage that might be happening when they have their army phase. You could also like fortify spaces on the map to kind of protect units. There's a delegate feature, which you can basically give a card to one of your teammates that's nearby. But then after you do this whole phase where you're doing what you can to hopefully, you know, talk these animal factions down, then there's an army phase. And that's when the decks of order cards, like whatever the 2 top order cards are going to be resolved. And there's a really cool like speed / initiative system where the 2 cards that are revealed for each army added up are going to be their speed. So once you see both armies' 2 cards, you'll see which one's going to do stuff first. So that's why like that surveying is really helpful. Then they're going to do stuff like move around, attack each other. But hopefully you've done something to kind of prevent or minimize that damage, because whenever a unit is defeated, you have to put a horror card on the top of the resource deck.
Yeah.
And it's going to haunt you the rest of the game. And whenever you draw horrors from the resource deck, you have to set them aside, and then, then you're going to resolve them. And it's not good stuff, people. It's not good stuff. So then the armies are going to do stuff based on their orders. And then after that, you see, did we get both sides' motivation to the green zone? If so, you win. And then if either side is on 0 motivation, they surrender and you lose. So you just play round after round, and you're trying to work these armies' motivation tracks. And it's just like, this game is just such a unique beast, and has amazing production. Like the insert, everything is so thoughtful. Like everything has its place. I think there's helpful stuff around the box edges, like for setup or telling you where to put components. Like everything's really nice. The rule book is great. They have really nice custom wooden animal meeples. And then you also have these rubber bases that are different shapes. So when you set up a scenario, you can easily see, oh, these are just the regular units of the frogs or whatever, but this is the leader of that army because the base looks like this. And there's just so many like really nice touches. And I've only played one scenario so far, but this is one that I want to explore more.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's neat. It's neat. So you've played it.
Yeah, I love this game. This was one of the games that I liked most last year and regretfully couldn't fit it on my like end of year best list. It's just so well produced and it looks beautiful. And I love the creativity that's on display in the scenario design, like the battles. Like the first one, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, is like two armies meeting at a river ford, which is kind of scary because like they're behind the river in cover, but now they want to attack, so they're going to put themselves out in the open. And so your peacekeeper, heroes are likely going to see some bad stuff if they're not really careful.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, though, you'll have like scenarios where like one army is lost in the fog of the jungle. And so its units are just like running around crazy while the other team is like picking them off. And so very challenging, but I love its focus on like
making peace.
You're like the UN.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going in and you're like, okay, stop it.
Yeah.
The UN if it had like ranger heroes or something. So I adore this game. It's a great pick.
Thank you. It's I haven't played it enough, so it didn't end up on like my top 10 of 2024. Mm-hmm. But I definitely want to play it more this year and like try all the scenarios and just explore it more. Did you ever get to play the original game?
No, I never did. I've played some of Sami's other games, like like Dale of Merchants and Lands of Galzier. They're all set in the same like animal universe, Dimyria or something like that. I don't know how to say it, but so I really like those games on the whole. Like I've liked all of them in different ways. This is probably my favorite of his games.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like when I heard about this, and I didn't even know that it was a re-implementation initially, but like when I heard about it, I was like, what? That's such a cool concept for a cooperative board game.
Yeah.
To talk people out of war, or talk animals out of war. I'm looking forward to playing this one more. It is called Peacemakers, Horrors of War. And just what do you call it? Shameless plug or whatever. I did, again, do an interview with Sami that is like fascinating to me to hear the backstory for how this game was created and evolved from the original game. So Cardboard Creations, check that out if you're interested in learning more about this one.
It's really cool too because like you mentioned that it kind of looks like Root. It's interesting because the original came out the same year as Root, but you can see the way like Kyle Farron's art really kind of helped it come into itself because the original game uses minis. And they're all gray and unpainted the way minis are. And then you look, so it kind of has that generic minis look, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at Horrors of War, the new one from last year, and it just looks so good. In part because it's that painted wood, and it looks incredible. I have never posted a picture of this without somebody being like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?"
For sure, and also like the old version was like, I think it was a campaign, and like there were other things. Yeah. So I think they just like streamlined it, and it is very quick to set up. You flip to whichever scenario you want, get the proper people on their bases and set them up on the map.
Yeah, it's surprisingly easy because it looks like you're like, oh, this is going to be complicated. Yeah. And then the actual rules are like 3 or 4 pages.
Right.
You're like, oh man, I'm going to have like all these complicated calculations and how units behave. And no, it's super easy.
Awesome. That's Peacemakers, Horrors of War.
So I am picking Scape Goat by
Don't know it.
John Perry.
Oh.
So from 2020. So John Perry is an incredibly talented game designer. Most people probably actually know him from video games. Like, so last year he and Derek Yu released UFO 50, which was a collection of 50 games from like the 8-bit era or whatever. But
cool.
John Perry is also a very accomplished board game designer. And so some of his games are super good. He with Derek Yu created a card game called Time Barons. He also did a really lovely, my kids love this game called Spots, where you're rolling dice to put...
I've played Spots.
Yeah, that's John Perry.
I was like, why does his name sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, That's the one I played.
And he's also done one of my favorite lane battlers, Air, Land, and Sea. But
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that. It was the same designer.
Yeah. Like all of his games are totally different. Like he just does not want to cover the same ground. And if you play UFO 50, where he's one of the major designers on 50 video games, you can kind of tell that he likes to cast a wide net. Well, so Scape Goat is his social deduction game.
Oh.
And the story of it was kind of added by its publisher, which I think was Indie Games and Cards. Let's see. I should check that. Yeah, Indie Boards and Cards. That's what they're called.
Okay.
And so in it, you're playing as gangs of goats, and that's maybe a little cutesy. I don't love that, but but it's fine. But your goat gang has recently pulled off a heist that maybe was too big.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. And so now somebody has to be the scapegoat, the fall guy. See, this is where the goat thing comes in, which is
and I like the alliteration, goat gang.
Yeah, your goat gang. And so what your goal is that somebody has to take the fall for, like, be turned into the police for this heist so that everyone else can get off.
Okay.
But the wrinkle is that unlike most social deduction games where you kind of know your role, in this one, everyone thinks that they're a member of the gang, but one person has been chosen to be the scapegoat. And everyone at the table knows that person is the scapegoat, except for that person.
Wow, interesting.
And you don't know that, but that person thinks they know who the scapegoat is.
Oh.
And so everyone thinks they know who the scapegoat is, but there's this lingering doubt, like maybe I'm the one that the gang is going to give me up so that I go to prison so they get away with this heist. And so what you do is you are assigning your goat to different little worker spaces to collect cards to hopefully gather the right set of cards to implicate the scapegoat. But if you are the scapegoat, you're trying to figure out that everyone is betraying you so that you can go to the police and have everyone else arrested.
Oh, wow.
But what happens if but it raises, so first of all, this game is incredible at paranoia. Like,
I can tell already.
Yeah. I've played a lot of social deduction games in my time. I'm sure you have as well. And usually, like, there's some paranoia there, right? You're like, oh, who's going to die at night or whatever.
Right.
But this one is just so tense because at all times you're like, everyone is coming for me. And you're never totally sure so you're like looking at other people's hands to see if they're trying to collect your color of cards, and you're trying to go and swap out your cards for other ones, or you're considering going to the police, and it is just so tense. And I really do think that John Perry, kind of with this low-key, overlooked game, made a social deduction game that inverts the formula and actually really centers that emotion in a way that most social deduction games just gesture at it, right? Like you'll feel some apprehension. No, in Scapegoat, you feel scared.
I love it.
And I love this game. It is super affordable because, it's like a $15 game.
Is it still in print?
I think it is. Like, I would have to look, but I know that, it looks like stores are listing copies like $15, $20.
I'm getting it.
And it's super easy to learn and play, but it generates such a good feeling of terror.
Just hearing how that all works, like, I feel that. I got to try this one. That sounds super cool.
Yeah, so Scapegoat by John Perry.
Great pick.
Thank you.
So, okay, the next game on my list. I'll stick to what I had. It's another Amabel Holland game called Doubt Is Our Product.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is 2023 release, Hollandspiel, designed by Amabel Holland. I actually have talked about it on one of the episodes of this podcast before, but this game is an asymmetrical battle against the tobacco industry in the 20th century. So you have one player that's representing the company, like the tobacco industry, and that player is going to be playing this like economic deck builder, and they're trying to like gain enough profit to win the game. Then the other player is playing as the movement, basically the people who are opposing the tobacco industry and what they're doing. And that player is going to be playing like this puzzly political tableau builder to represent them slowly coming together and organizing to advocate for legislation and regulation in the tobacco industry. So they're trying to score 10 points worth of goals in order to win. On your turn, you either play a card from your hand, buy a card, or pass. And your like main resource in the game is called influence. And when you play a card, there are 2 icons on each side. And when you have icons that match next to each other, like you get a little bonus. And this is also, I'm speaking about the movement. This is how they play, because the company has their own little card market of different types of cards they want to add to their deck. There's like a box where you place victims that represent children, adults, middle-aged, and elderly people, and an area where you have to increase the doubt so that, you know, they can make more money, the tobacco industry. This game, I just found it to be fascinating. I've only played it twice, and when we played it, we switched sides after. So we played it back to back and switched sides. Neither of us was able to win as the company. And
Good.
I'm sorry. No, as the movement.
Oh, dang it.
No,
that's
I said that the wrong way. Yeah, I was like, good. No, I said it the wrong way. Yeah, we were not able to win or to lose. We were not able to win as the movement. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, bad.
Like bad. Yes, you felt the struggle, but it also like makes you want to like explore it more. There are a lot of things interesting about it. Number one, like the fact that Amabel created this game and it was based on personal experience with her family. It's just kind of the way it really makes you feel both sides. Like you feel the theme and the struggle, which regardless of which side you're on. And the fact that you have the asymmetrical gameplay where both sides are like doing a different game, but it works together so well. And as I played this one, I just kept thinking to myself, like, wow, like this is so thematic and challenging on all fronts. And it's definitely not a light game in terms of the topic.
No, yeah.
You feel the struggle. It feels like a tough puzzle, and it's just like, I don't know, like nothing else I've ever played.
Yeah. It's such a good pick because I don't think there's anything quite like it. And I think it's unfortunately a very timely game with things like deep fakes, right? And like doubting information, that the company's goal is not that all it can do is muddy the waters with a bunch of junk science and be like,
to make money.
Yeah, like this one doctor says smoking is great for your health and decreases cancer. And now you've got to get like the other side has to really hammer against that there's always this asymmetry between people who are trying to tell the truth and people who are just willing to lie to get ahead. And so it's a brutal game.
Yes. But also very special.
Yeah, I brutal, parentheses, not pejorative, you know.
Yeah. So that one is Doubt is Our Product. And I also thought about 4X.
Oh,
for
yeah,
this,
4X.
Which I've only played once. And I know there's a new version of it. And that one is wild as well.
Have you played the new one?
So opaque. No, I haven't played the new one.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just saying, like, 4X
Oh yeah,
is like
4X is
the
wild.
currency trading. I've only played it once, like maybe a year or two ago, and after we played it, like we were all like, "Whoa!" And then, but I wanted to play it again, and now I
Right.
think I forgot it. I think that one's on Board Game Arena too.
Is it really? Oh my gosh!
I think someone told me 4X is on there.
Wow.
But that was my honorable mention for Amabel.
It's she has a complicated relationship with 4X, I think, because like it didn't do well, I think. And also it was she designed it when she kind of had like a brain fog. And so I'm really excited to see the new one.
The new version, yeah.
And just see like what is new Amabel gonna do with this game
right.
to like blow me
revisiting
away
it.
and or make people mad, you know?
Oh, totally. But yeah, so I'm hoping to play that new version because a friend has it. The same friend that I played Doubt Is Our Product with.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, and that was my way to slide that 4X in as an honorable mention.
Perfect.
All right.
So, okay, my last game.
Moment of truth.
So imagine that it's the year 2011.
Okay.
And you design a game that makes everyone think you're going to be the next hot thing. And then you don't become the next hot thing. And what a bummer that would be. So that game was The Road to Canterbury. And
The Road to Canterbury.
Yes. And Alf Siegert, designing for Eagle Griffin Games, kind of before they really went all in on Vital Lacerda, he designed a handful of games that I think are just hilarious comedy games.
Cool.
And so it was really tempting to pick. My favorite of his games is a game called Haven from 2018, and Ryan Lockett published it and did the art with Red Raven Games, and Haven is amazing. But the one that I really want to pick is The Road to Canterbury from 2011, which what this is so Alf is an English professor. He loves literature. So this is drawing from Chaucer. And the notion is that you play as medieval pardoners selling certificates to pardon people from their sins, but you're a fraud.
Okay.
And so the game uses kind of like this weird rondel system where you're trying to align like the certificates that you're selling to the sins that people are confessing while out on a pilgrimage to Canterbury. And you're trying to maximize all of this, but you're also a fraud. So you're trying to steal the confessions from certificate sales from your fellow players. And it ends up just being a very funny meditation on like the way that everything can be corrupted and abused.
Yeah.
And like, because obviously the people confessing these sins have, you know, they are worried about wrath or gluttony or whatever. And you're here and you are doing a good in a sense. You're making them feel better, but you're doing it by defrauding them. And Alf has done a handful of games like this that are very funny games about like religion and faith. Like he also did Illumination, where you're playing as rival manuscript illuminators in the Middle Ages. Anyway, so
cool.
So the road
I don't know these. Yeah.
So The Road to Canterbury is probably his most classic one. And just a few years ago, they did release like a slightly revamped anniversary edition kind of version of it. But this, if you're curious about Alf Siegert and who he is and this very peculiar design ethos that he has, The Road to Canterbury is probably the best starting point.
That's so cool. And what is Haven all about?
So Haven is cool because it is a lane battler, kind of like Omen, you know, or Marvel Snap or whatever, except the battles themselves are part of a larger campaign that's happening on a map. Which is because most lane battlers are just like about the battle. And
Right,
this one
right.
is about the war. And so you'll have situations where you're like, well, I don't want to invest these cards because this battle doesn't matter that much to me. So I'm going to withdraw and hold off for the next battle, which is something that John Perry did a little bit with Air, Land, and Sea, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So Haven, I find just totally charming. But it's the reason I don't use it is because it's the least Alf Siegert of his games.
Gotcha.
He just kind of designed it so that Ryan could publish it.
Gotcha.
But I love Alf's designs. I love Illumination, for instance. And not only because
Ooh.
sometimes I work with illuminated manuscripts, but also because it's a good game. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that is definitely a new one for my radar. So I'm gonna be looking up Alf and all of those games you just mentioned.
Yeah,
Cool.
he does some wonderful, weird designs.
And you know what? I'm even more kind of happy about is that I thought that this game that I'm about to mention, that you were going to mention, but that is just a testament to how many of these games that hit different that you have played and know about. So I'm actually glad that this did not take a slot on your list. And this is a game that came out in 2016, and I scored a copy of it at on a virtual flea market at a local game convention. And I was so excited because the designer is one of those designers where I want all of their games.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to say what the tagline is of this game.
Okay.
A co-opportunistic game of cannibalistic mayhem.
Oh my goodness.
Zimby Mojo. Yeah, by Jenna Felly and Devious Weasel Games. Oh my goodness. So I picked this up and I was just like, this game sounds wild. And like pretty much anything that Jenna puts out, like, is like has like that quirkiness. So I was like, I need to get this to the table before we have this chat. And let me tell you, we played a 5-player game of it, and I have not stopped thinking about it. And in this game, each player is a shaman, and you have your own Zimby tribe. And Zimbies are these like nasty little cannibals that are just like very loyal to you, the player who's kind of controlling them. And the reason it's called a co-opportunistic game is because players have to work together. And I should say, you can play this game solo, and it goes up to 8 players, which sounds completely wild, but I want to try it at some point. But your goal is to basically kill the cannibal king, because even though we're all different tribes, we all want this king gone. And then after the king is gone, we want to steal his crown. And so while you're trying to get to the king, and you have this board that almost looks like Pac-Man-y,
right.
Or like it looks very like kind of dated, but very charming. And in the center of the board is where the king is. And there's this like wooden token. And the king has these 4 thugs that are kind of moving around, protecting the central area of the board. And so each of our tribes, we have these Zimby tokens, and we're trying to work together because you have to work together to defeat the king. And the way you work together is everybody's Zimbies are these discs that have these stickers with these incredible feisty looking faces on them. And you're going to try to so you're going to be moving your Zimbies on the board from your personal like little tribe board. And there are 2 ways to do it. Like you can come into a portal, or you can just like march in, in this space that is connected to your tribe board. But eventually you want to try to join with other Zimbies so that we can stack our Zimbies into a column that's going to be strong enough to take down the king. But the more Zimbies you have, the slower you move on the board. So you're like trying to time when you're going to stack with people and who you're stacking with. And there, like, I just noticed like there were a lot of like politics with just like, I'm going to stack with these 2 players, but these 2 players over here are in a stack. And the other, like, so we fumbled through this because, like, the rules are a bit clunky. But now that we played it, I'm like, let's go again. Like, now, like, I got it. But the other thing is, after we collectively take down the king token flips over, and now it's a crown. And there's this, like, bag of fate where anybody who was in the column of Zimbies that defeated the king shake it up, and a random one comes out, and that's the player, whichever color it is, that's the player who is carrying the crown. Even though as a column, anybody on their turn can kind of control that column when it's their turn if they have some of their Zimbies in there. But at that point, you're trying to get the crown to your tribe board. So then it's every Zimby, every shaman for themselves. Yeah. And it's just a wild game. You have all these scroll cards, I think they're called, where
something
you
like
can,
that.
Yeah, you can play rituals and incantations. The king also, when the king is alive, triggers some effects and everything. And it's just like such a weird little game with, oh yeah, and the cannibalism thing. So you can, the main resource that you use to do stuff on your turn is called Mojo. So you have 4 Mojo, and they're little chits that you can flip over as you use them. But eventually you're going to need more, so you could get more Zimbies spawned, and you can eat one of your Zimbies and basically discard it to the far shore to get to Mojo. There's stuff where you can play these scroll cards, these incantations and spells and whatnot on other people's turns to, like, help them. Like, so it's just, I thought it was so cool.
I named this my weirdest game of 2016.
Perfect.
Yeah. Also non-derogatory, right? It is such a delight in this weird way that you kind of this cooperative game that then turns into this really vicious rugby game.
Right. Oh, it's funny that you say rugby too, because I thought about one of my friends who was playing with me I recently played Blitz Blood Bowl or something. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of that, like, where it's like, yeah, you're trying to get the football into the end zone, but something happened. This person knocked me over, you know?
Right.
And it's now bounced over here. And it was like one of those games where me and my friend Steven both kind of learned the rules, but we didn't have it fully down. So it was like a slow start, and we're trying to tell everybody, like, just bear with us. This is going to be a weird one. But again, after we got through that initial game, it was like, I want to play it again. Like, I was watching videos last night on, like, and there aren't many because it's an older game and it's like kind of a hidden oddball gem. But I want to play it more now.
Yeah,
like, I think this is going to be on my, like, permanent shelf, like you said.
Yeah.
So when I was, like, thinking about this list, I was thinking about Amabel Holland. I was thinking about Jenna Felly as, like, some of the core designers. But I'm super glad that you put these other designers on my list. You know, I feel like Tragedy Looper could be a good fit for this too.
Yes, absolutely.
That's super weird. And I know and I know you've played Ortis Regni. I'm hoping to play that soon. Like, that's different. But anyway, Dan, like I said, we could literally have this conversation once a quarter, once a month, and I love hearing about these games.
Yeah.
I love hearing about these games from you, and I love that you're putting them on my radar and other gamers out there, because it is really cool to just try some of this stuff that's off the beaten path.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much. And I'm just so happy to have heard about your own games. I now really want to try Witch's Shot delivery service. That sounds
nice.
Fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Dan, and I hope to, like, catch you at a convention this year at some point.
Yes, likewise.
You've been listening to the Board Game Geek podcast, produced and edited by Candace Harris. Special thanks to Matt Fonda for editing and mixing our music. Be sure to visit us on the web at BoardGameGeek.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitch under Board Game Geek. You can reach us by email at podcast@BoardGameGeek.com. Thanks for listening and happy gaming!